Let me pause the music. Let's make sure to keep our phones away. We're going to start off with meditating, and then we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to do drawing in the beginning while our minds are still open. We'll do that for about 10-ish minutes, and then we'll begin our lecture. Sounds good? All right, thank you guys so much for that. So let's begin this class by doing a super short recap of what we went over. Victor, what do you remember from last class?
I think we were discussing like how do we figure out how do we balance to who we cater
How do we balance what?
to who we cater or develop.
Yes. You, I believe it was you who asked an excellent question where you go, if we're talking about all the problems, what does right look like? And to answer your question, the first thing that we talked about was when we grip too much to an ideology and we have no room for leeway, something is going to happen and it tends to break. The more relaxed we are with our opinions and don't attach ourselves to those opinions, the more likely we could go, that person has a valid point. My opinion has been changed, and not have a threat to your identity and loss to who you are as a person. Paul, what do you remember from last class?
Oh, I was going to mention that I watched that guy once for a video for you. And he's the only thing on my YouTube Shorts.
Cool.
And
cool.
I'm not sad about that.
You're not sad about that? Okay. The way how he puts things into perspective, he's one of the few professors out there that has given Arabs their historical due diligence. He says we need to give credit where credit is due, and he's one of the people who talks about that, and I absolutely love him for that. What do you remember from this video, though?
Well, what I gained from that one was that no matter what, the progressive force will always push forward, develop, industrialize, research.
Correct.
And if you progress too far, too fast, the preserving force has to stop you. This video helped me a lot because I wrote it on the night of the election. And then this helped me get through it all. And
yeah,
we can't do shit about it, and it's okay. And I'm not dealing with it poorly. You are.
Actually, I think that brings up an interesting point because you were saying that people need to be a lot more lenient with their ideas. And one thing that I followed now that we've had the election, it's done, it's over. One thing that I followed is the reaction that people have to it.
Yes. When we have two opposing viewpoints, and I say, well, this is what I think is right, and he goes, CR, I disagree with you. This is what I believe is right. At a certain point, if we don't have this emotional detachment to the opinions that we have, even if I've been proven wrong, and it's an objective truth that I am wrong, and I'm going to go, no, I'm right. And I just plant my flag, and that's that, and I'm just going to close my eyes and go, la, 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 la. One could argue that we've been programmed to be like that, right? We talked about Apex, the class before last, and what it means to have that fighting to the top. And once you reach the top, you have one or two choices. Either do everything that you can to secure your position, or you get knocked off by the next person. And the election that we just went through right now is proof of that, where we're not collaborating with one another. One person's saying, that person's such a human being, that person's gonna ruin America, while that person says the exact same thing. So no matter who we vote for, we're like, all right, we gotta choose our poison, but in any case, we're still drinking poison. So yeah, fantastic point, thank you, and thank you for adding on to that. Let me get one more person. Curtis, what do you remember from last class?
Just rapid change in either direction cause rapid response.
Right. Yeah, it's just like a chemical reaction. The faster that speed of change, the more violent that reaction is. I'm hoping that from a political standpoint, we don't experience that because that will be a very major trigger. When the environment changes to a less beneficial environment, one that's more detrimental, more painful for us, as long as this shift is so gradual, we'll just stay with the boiling water, we'll get used to the heat, we'll get used to the pain, and be comfortable with the pain rather than jump on a different template that's more omni-inclusive. When you focus on growth for the sake of growth, the side effects on a mass scale happens to be loneliness, disconnection. When you group up a whole bunch of people together, how traffic times increase. You have lines everywhere that you go. Parking becomes more and more expensive. So when we have higher density, it alludes to taller buildings. Taller buildings means less aesthetically appealing views. Let me tell you guys this one story. I remember I was parked and I was alone listening to music, and this guy and his girlfriend parked their car right next to me. And he comes out, he's like, "What's up, bro?" I was like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" Pulls out a seat for his girl, pulls out a seat for himself. "Hey, are you from here?" He was like, "Man, I'm from New York. This over here," excuse my language, him referring to the sunset, "we don't have that, bro. We don't have sunsets over there, bro. It sucks." But he pointed out something which I feel is beautiful. If I see the moon and I call my mom, I'm like, "Mom, check out the moon right now." She steps out of the house. She has a tall building here, a tall building there. "Sweetie, I can't see the moon." Right? More often than not, that happens all the time. And it sucks. The sunset, something which is so beautiful, where it puts you in your place and you go, "Wow, I'm so insignificant compared to all of existence." You remove that from people, they start feeling lonely. And this guy who's like in love with San Diego because you can see a darn sunset of all things. All right, so let's move on to the next step. What does right look like? If more people feel a sense of fulfillment, how is the direction of society's growth different from the quote before, where everything's on fire and we're pretending everything's okay? How would this be different for us? What would that future look like?
I have lived this. In Jamaica, you have three options: lawyer, engineer, doctor, because those are what sort of makes money. And my parents instilled in me from a very early age, since like 4, you're going to be a doctor someday. And so that's why I thought I wanted to be. And for a very long time, that's the path that I took.
Right.
I went to the military, I was in emergency medicine, I was a paramedic, I went to med school, and I was not happier for it. This is a very noble job, but at the end of the day, my passion didn't allow me to sacrifice all of this time away from my family. And I was doing something that others wanted me to do, fitting myself into this mold that I didn't fit in. And now I picked what I want to be. And I
Bravo.
disappointed my father.
That's okay. That's okay.
And now I'm happier for it, and
Yeah.
I am thriving. I'm trying my hardest because I really love this. Keep diving into this because I have a passion for this. And I feel like if everyone has a passion in what they're doing, then they'll be better at it. And that's how society will progress. If everybody's doing something that they love, they will want to get better at it. They'll research more. They'll just develop more. And then they'll be the SME, subject matter
Expert, right? Yeah, I could not agree more with you. You're 100% right. So we're going to be talking about what it means to be a human being. But first, we're going to be talking about the words millions, billions, and trillions. But it kind of struck me that from a visual standpoint, we don't know what that actually means. And so keep in mind this scale. I want you guys to take let's do a 10-minute break. Go grab your coffee, get caffeinated. I brought some tea. I have some honey at the table over there. I'm going to set a timer and some music, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about my favorite subject. All right. So again, we just talked about what a billion means, what a trillion means in terms of our perspective and us trying to cope with that number. In your own words, how do you guys define a human?
Schmachtenberger, he said that one thing about we developed like the ability to like see the entire whole story
Yes.
from our evolutionary background all the way until today, and we can visualize and understand the entirety of the world. That's what I consider.
I love that as well. Yes. Let's talk about an accomplishment. What's something that we can do that no other animal can do? It'd be fun. Humor. That's actually a good point.
Hey, have you ever seen a cat?
That's a good point. I've actually never thought of that.
Such a human thing. But I feel like
Right.
we're conscious amalgamation of what the universe decided to bunch together.
Also, what Schmachtenberger was talking about, yes. We're the emergent property of everything coming together and going, I'm self-aware, I matter. Who am I? Right? Having that ability, it's, to the best of our knowledge, is what sets us apart. Not only that, but we can also create this thing called the internet, which if we try to explain that to anyone who's been born and raised on an island, disconnected from us, what would you describe the internet as? All right, let's continue this on. So let's talk about the unit of human. When we talked about what needs to change, and a couple of you guys made the excellent point in saying we need to focus the environment on a person, on the experience, rather than the bottom line and making money and maximizing for money. So if we're going to talk about the human experience, let's talk about what a human is. I showed you those two videos on what a billion, what a trillion looks like, so you can understand scale-wise what it means. At its most fundamental level, each of our cells contains roughly 100 trillion atoms. So we saw that big group of cash together at a trillion. We have 100 trillion atoms in one cell. Depending on the age and size of a person, they can have up to 37.2 trillion cells. Each one of those cells has 100 trillion atoms, all interconnected by a system of roughly 7 trillion nerves. And within a sac composed of 1.6 trillion skin cells, the human body houses 78 organs. Each of these organs has cells. Each of these cells have atoms. It dies after a certain time of not playing. Yeah, it lets me know that it also exists too. Because once I was like, "All right, I'm going," and then I heard thunk, and I came back for it. We're so lucky that we're put together in a way where we don't have to consciously focus on breathing in the middle of the night. We wouldn't have to go, "Oh, my heart rate is too fast." There we go. Now it's slower. Oh, I'm going to run right now. Let me speed it up. Let me speed it up. Oh my God, something crazy is happening. Let me increase my adrenaline by 32%. But not too much because I don't want to pass out from that adrenaline rush. We also have brains. These brains are the part that I studied for a long period of time, both during school and after I graduated. It's the reason why in the literature I gave you guys all the neuroscience articles, because there's a scientific method to figure out, well, what happens if someone is sitting down for 15 minutes not doing anything? No cell phone, no Tetris, no text messaging, just sitting down, taking deep breaths. How is the activity of the brain comparison to someone walking for 14 minutes and then doing the brain scan? For me, the way how I figured and how I rationalize my education is, if we can understand the human brain, perhaps we could design a better environment that's more applicable to us rather than what money brings us. Our infancy versus our adulthood. It takes us roughly 788,940 minutes. This is at the max scale of what's a healthy time for a baby to start walking, before we can actually start walking. We're helpless. We are super needy. We can't even run away. We can't even hold our heads up. It takes us 3 months to be able to have enough control where this isn't flopping down to one side going, "Mom, where are you? I don't see you." We're so helpless. And yet we're apex, right? We are still number one despite us being so freakishly helpless when we're born. It takes a fawn 20 minutes for it to get up and running. For us, it's 39,000 segments of 20 minutes for us to be able to start walking. Incredible stuff. However you pronounce it, make fun of me or don't, I'm going to say the word niche. We are niche creators. Those who say niche, fine, life will go on. I'm cool with that. Whether we have a beautiful tropical area or deep forest areas where we have spiders, you have snakes, you have other insects and animals that see you as a piece of meat that's walking around. Whether it's deserts, whether it's the terrain that has more ice and winds that will kill us immediately, or an area void of oxygen, we happen to be everywhere. And the best part about it, for better or for worse, is we're still maintaining the apex title. We still get to dictate the rules of, hey, we can eat whatever the hell we want. I intentionally showed, from my perspective, remember how we talked about saying the word yes, it defines no? So the opposite has to exist if you're defining one. Our propensity to love, in my opinion, is the same as our propensity to hate. Our propensity, or think of capacity, for good is the same of our capacity for evil. It's more about of our awareness and where we choose to go. We're highly optimistic and we're highly pessimistic. In my case, I'm the one who's adamantly an optimist. Once you choose to have hope and be an optimist, and it's a conscious choice, hold on to that as much as possible. That's the best advice I can give you guys. But we're also highly pessimistic. Someone who has food, guaranteed water, guaranteed shelter, has beautiful sunlight, clean air, will still say life sucks, everything sucks. Yeah, I can also get hot water at any time I want. I could DoorDash food anytime I want. But still, I'm a pessimist. Life sucks. We're all going to hell. We're doomed. We're risk tolerant and risk averse. So we have people who go, is there a challenge over there? Let me go find out what's going on. And we have other people who go, oh my God, is that a little change? No, I don't want change. I don't want change. And that goes into Roy Casagranda's talk when he talks about those who want to further humanity and those that want to hold it back and retain what the good life used to be. From an urban planning point of view, I feel this is incredibly important to mention because we never think about this, thankfully. Humans eat a lot and humans poop a lot. Let's say when we went up to Cowell's Mountain and we looked up and we saw what 1.4 million human beings in one area looks like, imagine how much poop is coming out of them and how to control that, how to redirect that. Are we sending it into the ocean and going, hey, it is what it is, we're apex, we get to dictate our rules? But then how do you feed all those people? We mentioned COVID a couple times. COVID was the most quintessential, best modern example to understand how food affects us as human beings. There was this overwhelming narrative to say, we need to shut down all of our slaughterhouses. Just shut them down. There's no backup plan. There's no other way to feed people. My question for you guys, if we take away the capability of a whole population to eat, what will happen? Have any of you guys experienced starvation before? Pure hunger, like absolute hunger, where you had no option, where you had to go to bed hungry. The act of fasting is one of my favorite behaviors that we can choose to do. Why? Because it gives you the ability to empathize with someone. If we pass someone on the street and they go, hey, listen, I don't want money, I'm just hungry, can you buy me food? That currently exists in the year 2024. We're going to talk about food distribution and allocation, who gets what, but this is an important point that you guys need to understand. Whenever you've gone to Albertsons or Vaughn's or Sprouts or any place that's ever had food, you guys do understand that 100% of everything that you see in reality is 40% of what has actually been grown. We just throw away most of our food. Not because they're ruined, but because they look different. And so that person saying, hey, I don't want money, I just want food, we had food, but we chose to throw it away rather than help them out. That is legal and fair in our system. Our navigation of what is right behavior and wrong behavior, that falls underneath that. That kind of astounds me. So is it a system that works? Maybe not. It does for some, for sure. It does for many, for sure. We also have statistics that show the quantity of people that are going hungry now, as opposed to the total quantity of people who were going hungry 50 years ago, has reduced. Granted, you can always use statistics to justify one hypothesis over the next, but in reality, the fact that people still die from starvation, still die from malnutrition, where a parent has to watch their child pass away because they don't have clean water or they don't have enough food, is an atrocity because that food exists. But again, it's fair, because if you fight for it, then it's survival of the fittest. In addition, every member in society functions on a belief system. If you believe that racial superiority is a thing and you happen to be on the right side of that spectrum, you're going to behave differently than you saying, well, I'm a person just as much as you're a person. My belief system maybe is different than yours, but you also matter as well. I asked Victor this question, like, in a society where my ideology, my philosophy is different than yours, if you're the planner for the entirety of this location, what's the right way of doing it? And use the word that starts with the letter C. Do you remember what it was? Compromise. Let's take one brief moment and let's talk about that word. The mere existence of compromise means that that milestone had to be reached. We had to get to a point where it's like, hold on, my family's hunger matters more than your family's hunger. So I'm going to hoard all the food that I can hoard. I can make sure that my reality is most optimally designed for me rather than you. But when we finally reach the point of saying, okay, if both of us are not completely happy, but both of us are satisfied enough, what do we call that word? Compromise. The fact that we also have that rather than eat or be eaten distinguishes human beings. So compassion is definitely a part of it. In addition to that, emotions. We're so simple, but we're also highly complex at the same time. When we talk about the word happiness, what happiness means to you is different from what happiness means to me. I talked about what my utopian environment includes: a nice scenic view. So if I have a view to a sunset, if I have a nice book, if I have a sketchbook, and maybe some good music. That's the good life for me. That I am satisfied. Whereas someone else is like, no, I need 10 screens pointing at me. I need my anime to be playing. I need to be going to this group of people, hang out with them, then go out with those people, whatever the case may be. Everyone has a different spectrum and everyone feels differently about them. In every case, whether it's rage, whether it's joy, whether it's trust, whether it's fear, surprise, the level of intensity can go up and it can go down on a per person basis. Now, the last one that I have, this one has the most amount of controversy in academia, mostly because just like how when we talked about highways and how in many areas in the United States, racism is what dictated what goes where and who's divided and who's kept together, education's had the same thing. Which schools get the funding for after-school programs? What children can actually have a scientific experiment, see these two liquids come together and create a completely different color, or alternate colors, or if we show what a magnet looks like and how that effect can be with something else, or if you spin this magnet, how does that effect change if you're holding it steady next to something else? If some group has access to knowledge while others don't, it can skew where this is. But regardless, the total quantity of unintelligent people match the quantity of super intelligent people. We all tend to be roughly around here, depending on our interests, depending on educational availability. For myself, I could honestly say that I could not afford this education by any means. I am not supposed to be here. But I took some risks. I dipped into my savings account and I made sure that I could pursue what I wanted to do. Not everyone can do that. I can guarantee you guys, at some point, I was over here on the intelligence spectrum and I worked as hard as I could to move up as much as possible. I'm still competing against myself, just like how you're competing against yourself, and all of us are. But on a massive scale, we're also all dealing with that as well. Now, we talked about the total quantity of nerves that we have, atoms that we have in cells, the total quantity of cells that we have in our body, in our organs. What wraps everything together is this thing called consciousness. How do you guys define consciousness?
Consciousness, I think, is just your ability to be self-aware.
Okay, your ability to be self-aware. Okay. Shanice, how do you explain self-awareness?
It's very difficult.
It is. This is, by the way, one of the toughest questions that as humanity we're still trying to figure out. Because you have a philosophical way of describing what consciousness means. There's a scientific way of explaining what it means. And then you have everyone in the middle going, it means I exist. Well, who's I? Who's this entity? I don't know. You're asking too many questions. Let's talk about the Kardashians. So
I've recently started thinking, not really thinking, but I've been practicing meditation.
nice.
I struggle with intrusive thoughts.
Welcome to the club. Yeah.
And I feel like I have zero control over my mind because I'm supposed to be conscious and aware, so I should be able to control what goes in and out of my mind. But I do not.
Right.
I sometimes stay awake and think of things that I'm not necessarily thinking of it. My thoughts are just there. So my consciousness somehow has its own consciousness. I feel a little bit sometimes separated from who or what I am. So I'm trying meditation to see if I can be the owner of my mind instead of my mind being the owner of me. So I can
Mm.
control my intrusive thoughts and my racing mind and my anxiety. So I don't know what my consciousness is.
Mm.
I don't even know what it truly means to be self aware.
Mm.
But I base that on my responses and stimuli of the environment.
Mm.
So us talking is my evidence of my awareness because then I receive feedback and that's the best I got.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And the scary part about what you said is you have no way of proving it. I have no ability to prove that you guys exist. Individually, you have no way of proving that I exist. Even if we touch one another, if I do that and tap your finger on me, that is just electric signals being sent over to your brain, which I could manipulate if I have control over your reality. So to prove that I really am here, I am because I am. Like, I am, like, there's no way of actually saying that. But you also mentioned another important part is that separation. There is reality, however we want to choose to describe that, and a separation of reality to someone observing it, the observer. My way of explaining is symbolically a toroidal field, or the way how magnets have those arrows, where you see those waves going outwards and then feeding back in and having it be indefinitely moving around, may best depict the expansion and reintroduction of one's identity into the environment. This dynamic field of awareness infinitely re-enters itself again and again as a person's surrounding changes. Again, feeding into this topic of we are products of our environment. Similarly, if we have something that's making us fearful for our lives, if we have a knife, a sharp edge pointing at us, that affects us in a very specific way. And that reintroduction of fear can amplify itself if you don't have enough control or enough experience to say, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. So that's what consciousness essentially is a person, a being. In my case, I'm standing here and I have all of your guys' beings next to me. We have some energy. Even though I'm not looking at Victor, there's some feeding going on. There's some feeding going on as well. Take my persona right now. I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm looking you guys in the eyes. Whereas if I'm super mad and I'm just talking about this and life just sucks, and I'm doing this for an hour, hour and a half, I could guarantee you, you guys leaving here, you're gonna have some form of that feeling. You're feeding off of this type of energy.